What's going on, Meat Mafia? Welcome back to another episode of the Meat Mafia Podcast. Before we get rolling here today, we want to give a quick shout out to you, the listener. We are so thankful to have you on board with the Meat Mafia, and we cannot thank you enough for your endless support. Without you guys, we are nothing. So thank you so much for your comments, feedback, likes, subscribes, listens, everything. It means the world to us. With that being said, please go to your podcast medium's platform, give us a 5-star review. If it's not 5 stars, maybe don't give us a review. Subscribe, do the whole thing. We really appreciate that. And also, please go check out some of the links below. We have some great sponsors, and they are killing it in the world of food and providing great high-quality food for people just like yourself. Quickly outlining our sponsors, we have Holy Cow Beef, Rick Ranches, Equip Foods, and the Carnivore Bar. These are all great products. If you want to learn more, go check out the links below. Without further ado, here's a word from our sponsors. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Equip Foods. Equip provides a complete source of grass-fed beef protein with no added chemicals, fillers, binding agents, or artificial coloring or sweeteners. If you're familiar with the supplement industry, you know that most supplements are loaded with ingredients that you can't even pronounce. Equip's Unflavored Prime has one single ingredient derived directly from grass-fed beef protein. For purists like ourselves who try to only consume balanced, real sources of nutrition, this protein powder checks all the boxes. Go check them out in the link below and use our promo code in the description to get a discount. Holy Cow Beef is a regenerative farm based out of Lubbock, Texas, with humanely raised grass-fed, grass-finished beef available for sale and shipment. Companies like ButcherBox source from outside of the US and Australia and don't specifically have the American Grass-Fed Association, or AGA, label, but Holy Cow does. They also sell chicken and pork in addition to their amazingly high-quality beef raised right here in Texas. Alden and Ann Warren have overcome their own health struggles, and they have inspired us by the way they live their lives and by the way they raise their animals. So go check them out in the link below, and they also accept Bitcoin, so all you Bitcoiners out there, go check out Holy Cow Beef. Also, if you're in Colorado, go check out Rick Ranches, a grass-fed, grass-finished regenerative farm servicing all over Colorado. He also accepts Bitcoin, so all you Bitcoiners out there, go hit up Rick Ranches and get your beef today. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Carnivore Bar. The Carnivore Bar is an animal-based, shelf-stable product with only 3 simple ingredients: beef, tallow, and salt. The bar is inspired by the ancient traditions of Native Americans who needed to create pemmican bars to preserve meat for long-distance travel. The Carnivore Bar is perfect for animal-based athletes or busy people looking to follow a low-carb diet. It's easy to throw in a bag and take with you anywhere you're going, whether it's a workout, hike, or even packing it for a snack at work. I throw them in my triathlon bag and take down a bar immediately after working out. They're a fantastic product, so go check them out and use our discount code in the link below. Brett, you stud. What is good, baby?
How we doing? Pumped for this episode, my man.
Dude, sometimes these one-on-one episodes are just what we need.
Yeah, I know that we've said that we are going to commit to doing more of them, but I feel like even just one a week would be a good dynamic moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And I also feel like once you move down here, or down across over to Austin, we're going to be doing a lot more in-person stuff and a lot more one-on-one content that we're going to release. So I do think that we'll eventually get there by a force of nature, but for now, yeah, we definitely need to be doing at least one a week of these because I personally enjoy them.
Yeah, I think it's a great way just to reflect on everything that we've been doing, everything that we're building. And, you know, we've interviewed such amazing guests, but I think that like the core of what we're doing is built off of like our friendship and just passion for nutrition and trying to fix the food system. So it needs to just continue to be core to our podcast and our message, you know?
100%. And let's properly introduce this episode. This is episode 100 of the Meat Mafia Podcast, which you and I are excited, just can't even believe that we're here, honestly. We started the podcast March 1st, 2022. No expectations, no idea what it was going to turn into, but we hit it hard and we committed to it. And, you know, we're sitting here 196 days later, releasing the 100th episode. Feels pretty crazy. We've recorded 113 episodes.
113 in the bag.
So we're sitting here with a mountain of of content, guests, relationships that we've built. It's just an exciting time to be where we are in our journey, kind of progressing from these Twitter accounts into the world of podcasting. How's it been for you? You loving life, doing what we're doing?
I mean, we talk a lot. I mean, we probably have 4 to 5 plus calls a day and
Yeah.
talk about everything under the sun, which is hysterical. I wish we could record some of those conversations, but I don't know. This has honestly been this is probably the most special period of my life ever. So we were talking before we hit record. So we've got 113 episodes in the bag. This is episode 100. We recorded episode number 1 with Texas Slim, and we released that on March 1st. So that's 196 days ago. And the point of me saying that is that with that pace, we've averaged close to a podcast every 2 days. And that was pretty intentional. I think that we had, we had gotten, I think you had booked Rob Wolf on the podcast, which was a dream guest for us. And you booked him early. You'd booked him when I think we'd only had like maybe 15 episodes in the bank. And we said, look, if we're going to have Rob on, we want a really nice repository of content for our listeners. So let's just hit it hard. And, we've been able to just tap into the leverage of Twitter, networking, just continuing to reach out to people and message people that we found to be interesting. And I think that's really been like the secret sauce that we've had. And it's just been so fun this entire time,
Yeah, I think, and we can get into this too, because I know we kind of had a nice little format for this conversation, but one of the biggest takeaways for me was our initial mindset, which I truly think has been the correct way to view it. Because so when we started, we did take that idea of like recording like crazy, trying to get as many great guests as possible, for a few different reasons. The first of which was you and I are co-hosting a podcast. And the biggest thing about hosting a podcast or co-hosting a podcast that you hear out there is it's really challenging to have 2 hosts for the podcast. Flow is important. You need to understand the dynamics, like who's going to ask the next question, how to work through some maybe awkward moments during the interview, or moments where like you need to recenter or realign the guests back towards the center of the conversation. And I think us just hitting it hard gave us a lot of reps early on in a short period of time. So we really just had like this block of time where, dude, there was a week, man, I really wish I had done the research on this beforehand. There was a week we probably recorded 8 or 9 episodes, which is just unsustainable, but it helped us, man. I really do think it helped us. And it also built up the repository, as he said, of great guests, great conversations. And we weren't sitting here going, I mean, we were looking at viewership, but we weren't sitting here going, this is really like doing all this is really going to increase viewership. We were like, it's going to make us better podcasters and we're going to be able to get better guests, which hopefully down the road leads to more viewers and people who are engaged with what we're talking about. So that's my long little rant of like a big takeaway where I think our mindset was actually on point for how to approach it.
Yeah, I think that what you and I spent a lot of time talking about is like, obviously, we're in the nutritional space. We were looking at the statistics the other day. I think we just cracked the top 50 for top nutritional podcasts in the US, which is cool because it's like a testament. It's like, all right, what we're doing is working here. But we don't have medical degrees. We're not nutritionists. We're not dietitians. We're not personal trainers. We're just 2 people that are just very curious and trying to get to some root causes and solutions of what's gone on in the food system. How can we fix it? And we've just wanted to interview people that we found to be really interesting. And so, we've consumed a ton of podcasts over the last few years. So like a lot of the guests that we've had on, whether it's like, Ken Berry, Rob Wolf, Mark Schatzker, Sean Baker, Dr. Chafee. These are all guests that you and I have learned from for years and have now been able to like go behind the scenes and be able to interview them and ask the questions that we've wanted to ask. And like, I think that like genuine curiousness has come out. And I think also like, we just have an energy and passion for this stuff. And like for anyone that's listening, whether, you're interested in doing a podcast or starting a Twitter account or social media, it's like, just leaning in on that thing that really makes you unique in yourself. Like that's the ultimate competitive advantage that you could possibly ask for. And like for us, it's like we've just been so interested in the space that I think that energy and passion comes through based on some of the feedback that we've been getting.
Yeah, if you're not all in on it, and all in, like there's degrees to being all in, but all in, I think it is it's like, this isn't gonna fail. Like have this is not gonna fail mentality. Like I will do whatever it takes to keep this thing alive. It doesn't mean you're gonna be perfect. Like that's not what all in means. All in just means I'm gonna make this thing work. And so I think like we took to that. And if you're not, like, there's a very fine line there. Like people know, like I've uh, you know, I've done things in the past, even podcasts with buddies, where it was like we knew it was going to fail at the beginning. And that was definitely not the case with this. We were like, we're hitting this thing. This is going to be part of what we do. So let's do it. And I do think that's a really important distinction for people to make. It's like, know why you're doing it. And we knew why we were doing the podcast. It was important to us connecting with people who have helped build our understanding of health and nutrition, and also just like getting to know and getting to share other people's messages who have had a huge impact on us with the people who are starting to follow us and starting to pay attention to what we're doing.
Totally. Yeah. This is probably like, whether it's the podcast or just the Meat Mafia brand in general, this is like one of the first things, maybe the first thing I've ever done where it's like, there's almost this switch that was just flipped of this acceptance of we are going to make this thing work. And I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know what the resources that are required. I don't know where we're going to be. I don't know what ultimately this is going to turn into, but I think we both just trusted in each other and the vision and the passion that we've had. And I think also like us just being really close friends and we have so much respect for the other person. I think that's really helped us click. And I know we just recorded an episode with David Gillespie, who's written a bunch of books in regards to like the problem with sugar and seed oils. And also he's done a lot of research on psychology and addiction. And one of the things that he said is in order to break an addiction, whether it's food, drug, alcohol, gambling, sex, it's like this shift in your mind. You flip the switch and you say, I'm never going to do this thing again. And then you actually put together the systems in place to make sure that you never go back to that thing. And I feel like in some ways that was like us, where we just flipped the switch and we just said, we're going to make this thing work. And then lo and behold, it's like, you know, we reach out to guests on Twitter. We have a great guest. We ask them if they can connect us with multiple people. And now here we are 113 episodes in. And the reason why we're saying this is it's like, we've gotten guests. People say to us all the time, like the guests that you guys have gotten on so quickly, they're fantastic. And it's because we've just worked with that intensity and we haven't taken no for an answer. And we've just kept pushing and tried to get people that we want to have on the show. And I think that's worked in our favor, which we're really proud of.
Yeah. And I think there's obviously been a ton of learning experiences along the way.
Yes.
But I do think kind of fundamentally understanding our dynamic too, with like how we've grown the podcast, is important, where we've played off each other behind the scenes. Like what people don't see is like, dude, you've booked so many killer guests through your account, just being able to like openly reach out to people through Twitter, which I think is something you should talk about, because, you know, and I just, for whatever reason, you had a ton of success, a high hit rate with just reaching out to guests, whether it's like an open tweet or like a DM, and getting them on the podcast. And then behind the scenes, I've been doing a lot of like the editing, getting the systems together, trying to figure out some of the production stuff. It's coming along slowly just because we've been working at a huge volume, but like we've gotten better in that area as well. And we've been able to release a lot of episodes because we were both committed to our different roles. And I think it was kind of like a natural way that we fell into those. Like your account was bigger, you had bigger reach, and I was just like, had the free time to be able to be focused on the production stuff. So I think that whole balance is actually key to understanding, like, if people are sitting here like trying to figure out how to grow a podcast, like you do need to understand that there's a lot that goes into it. And like having the two of us focus on those two separate areas was very helpful.
Yeah. And I don't want to get like too off topic, but I think maybe a really important piece of context for people would be like, I mean, we wouldn't be where we're at without all the behind the scenes legwork that you've done from an editing standpoint, getting the podcast live, reaching out to sponsors, putting the show notes together. Like you took that on when I was working a 9 to 5 and didn't have that skill set. But a lot of that came from what you were doing with our buddy Casey's Austin food account, TexoXO. And I know that you would just quit your job and you would just like taken on a bunch of things and you'd offer to edit his videos for him. So maybe you could give a little context into that story, because that's kind of organically led to what we're doing with the Meat Mafia and all the work that you've put in behind the scenes.
Yeah. So I quit my job like this time last year.
Literally a year ago.
Yeah, literally
Yeah.
a year ago. And I got down to Austin October 1st with you, and we were living together. And at that point, I was set on this idea of starting this business with someone who lives down here in Austin. And the idea was to build this marketplace for secondary sources of income for farmers. And I was really, really excited about the idea, but there was part of me that still wanted to explore different creative avenues before I committed myself to something. And I think that really started to show in the way that I started approaching the business. And I just got excited about doing other fun things on the side too. So one of the things I committed to was like helping Casey out with his editing, filming of his social media account. And I had no experience with that stuff, nor like I was working in finance before. This was completely new to me, but I do remember like just being willing to be the beginner and like try to figure shit out, and like the excitement of just being like, I think I can put something cool here together if I just like sit down for a few hours and try to just, learn about it, apply it, and see if I can put together a good 90-second clip. And yeah, that was definitely core to me getting more comfortable and just kind of having the confidence to be like, yeah, of course I can take on editing the podcast and taking care of some of this behind the scenes stuff. And like, I would say I'm still a massive beginner with any sort of production and editing stuff, but kind of just understanding like the basics of it and how our process needs to work. Once you figure out the tools you need to use, the process you need to apply, like it just becomes a repetitive process. But yeah, I think leaning into that creativity was huge for me. It kind of unlocked something in myself that was like previously I had really just been working in a job that was not demanding that much of my creative side. And then this was me being like, okay, like this is something that I think I actually have talent for. Let me just lean in. Let me hit the pause button a little bit. Let me try to figure out what I can do. And at the same time, I was writing online, trying to just crack the nut on like, do I have any writing skills that I can apply? And that was also very much driven behind wanting to learn more about regenerative agriculture and how I can kind of just like find a little shimmer of light to get involved with what's happening. And yeah, it's been crazy to see it all unfold. You really never know what the hell's going to happen with your life until you start really just putting in the action and the effort. And looking back, it's like the Steve Jobs quote, you look back and you can connect all the dots. That's how I feel right now. It's like, yeah, those things that I was doing at the time were totally random and weird, but they absolutely funneled into what we're doing now.
100%. I just think it's important for you to tell that story, because it's like we felt this for a long time, and we have a lot of people, our friends or just people that DM us about like just how we've been building out what we're doing. And it's like we were those people that wanted some type of creative outlet. Like we were literally begging for it. Like you were up in Boston, I was in New York. And like you said with your story, it's like, you weren't in just like some little corporate job. Like you were in a real estate private equity job, making like high 6-figure salary, crushing it on paper, in a great relationship, but you still felt like there was something missing. So part of our story as to why we're here now is we had signed up for Ironman Waco, which is an hour outside of Austin. So we decided to get an Airbnb there because we said, look, we could do the race, or we could really just go to a new city. I was looking to get out of New York. I had ended a relationship. I was looking for something fresh. You had just ended a relationship. You had quit your job. You were ready for the next thing. And you had been talking to a couple investors about this regen ag technology idea that you had, but there was really nothing tangible. You had just trusted in this vision and this creative side. You really didn't know what it was going to turn into. And that's why I had that perspective, because we were living together. I was like sleeping on your floor, and you started blogging, and then you started doing the editing, and you were like, look, there's nothing really tangible behind this right now, but I just want to like exercise these creative interests that I have. And ultimately, right, like the podcast that you were doing didn't work. The stuff with Casey ended up kind of fizzling out because he didn't want to do it anymore. But all that skill set has just perfectly applied to what we're doing now. So I don't know. I think it's just a good lesson on just like trusting your gut instinct, and that, we have the strongest gut instinct out of any animal for a reason. And you might be surprised what it leads to if you really lean in on that and trust your gut instinct.
Yeah, I think, and you don't get anywhere without acting. You can sit there all day and think about what you want to do, but without acting and without putting in the reps, it doesn't allow you to have the vision. Like,
Totally.
you don't get the vision from sitting in your bedroom and just thinking about things. Like, you really do need to go out and get your hands dirty and act and try to get the experience. I would say another aspect of this too is like, one of the first places I went to meet friends when I got to Austin was the Bitcoin community and getting involved with what's happening in the Bitcoin world in Austin. And that's been another aspect of our whole growth and trajectory, is like getting involved with what's happening in the Bitcoin world, which is something that obviously is a little bit tangentially related to the health topics that we try to focus on. We do think that there is an important distinction that connects some of these dots of like why the food system's gone sour, or is completely messed up. So I think that there too is, again, like kind of another story of just like, you got to put yourself in the arena, get in there and get after it.
It's such a good point, man. It's like, and that's actually a really good message of like, kind of like taking a step back and trying to realize what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then leaning in on a lot of those strengths. And what we started realizing early on, whether it was like writing a thread, putting out content, putting out a podcast, the decentralized nature of the Bitcoin community was also very interested in the decentralization of the food system. So I think that lent itself to a lot of what we were talking about, of like, buying from your local farmer, making that intentional effort to source your meat and your food for your family. So we were like, okay, well, there's clearly something here. You've been a huge Bitcoiner for a few years. You orange pilled me. And then we leaned in on that. And some of our biggest guests early on, like I remember we got Marty Bent to come on the show, who's been a huge influence, I know, in your Bitcoin journey. I've gotten to learn a lot from him as well. And we did a live podcast episode at his studio at the Bitcoin Commons, which is connected to Unchained Capital. And I remember that was like a big moment of realizing like, there's really something here. We need to keep leaning in on this movement. And like the whole Unchained team, whether it's like, Parker Lewis, Kaylee, the whole production team, they've been able to, they've offered their studio to us basically whenever we want it. And it's allowed us to get some high potential guests in the studio, and have those in-person episodes, which just adds an amazing rapport and an amazing dynamic to the show.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we're trying to focus on too, is like we've done all this stuff virtually so far. We've released a lot of audio so far, and you and I both have been okay with that at the beginning. It's allowed us to figure out how to make all this work. But then now we're kind of in this like second phase where it's like, how do we evolve? And there definitely is like a visual component that we want to start leaning into more. And then we also think that in-person stuff is just the way to go. And we've talked about this a bunch. Marty was our first in-person guest, but there's something different about being in person and having a conversation with someone in person, and just being able to feel like their vibe, what they're all about. I mean, our in-person guests so far are Marty, Taylor,
Kyle Kingsbury,
Jimmy Song, Parker.
Yep.
Am I missing any?
I think it's just those 5 so far.
Which,
awesome guest list.
Man, those conversations were incredible.
Yeah, it's just a different I'm trying to figure out how to explain it, because I feel like we have a really good dynamic over Zoom, and the in-person just adds like that. It's adds that different layer. And I think that for the listener here, I think it adds a different dynamic for you, but it's also really exciting. Like I remember when we went out to the ranch to do our episode with Kyle Kingsbury. For anyone that doesn't know Kyle, he's an amazing guy, fought in the UFC. He was the head of performance optimization at On It. I've listened to his podcast since I was a senior in college, so it was a huge deal for me. And he's a freaking moose too. He's like probably 6'4", 6'5", 230, all muscle. He's like a big teddy bear. He's like the sweetest guy ever. But like, you're intimidated because, you follow this guy for a long time. And now you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm the person with the microphone interviewing him after hearing him talk for countless hours. And you just kind of have this like feeling of excitement and you just lean into it. And we always say this, whether it's like public speaking or podcasting, you kind of feel this like nervousness in your throat for like the first question or the first 10 seconds. But if you can just trust what you're doing, you eventually just ease into it and you get more comfortable. So like, just like the speaking ability, the ability to connect with people that we've gained, no matter what this thing turns into, like it's been one of the most special experiences of my life. 100%.
Totally. All right. So let's get into recapping. Let's get into recapping some stuff.
Absolutely.
We've been rambling for a bit here. All right. So let's do some episode superlatives. And I want to ask you a few questions and then you can spin them back on me. But what do you think the most underrated podcast guest that we've had on is?
It's such a, we've had so many freaking good podcast guests.
Underrated.
Okay. I actually know who you're gonna nod your head when I say this. Our episode that we did with Jevy Don, I forget how early on that was. For me, I walked away with so many different nuggets. So for anyone that doesn't know, we connected with this guy. Goes by Jevy on Twitter. He's got a few thousand followers. He's a Bitcoiner. He works at Unchained as a product manager, and he's very into the regenerative agriculture space. He's also like a husband. He's a father, super based. He's got like a bunch of good recipes on tallow and how to source like the right cuts of meat and quarter beefs and half beef from the farmer. And just kind of the way that he lives his life and has structured his day for performance. And I don't know, I just feel like he was one of those guys that just operates on all cylinders. And it was just a very genuine, organic conversation. And I walked away from that being like, there's just so much to learn from someone like that. So that for me really stuck out.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a really good one. I was going to say,
what about you?
I was going to say Matt D.
Oh, that was that's episode number, is that episode number 3? That's epi 3 for anyone listening.
Yeah. And the quick bullet points on Matt are that he worked in big food doing cost optimization and modeling for big food companies. And he since left. And on that podcast, he really dissected what goes into all these companies that are making these foods that are loaded with seed oils. It's an awesome episode. He's incredibly smart. One of the most well-rounded people I know, and like just incredibly articulate. So that one for me. And then if I had to say another one, I think I would put Mark Schatzker on that list too, because I love the way that guy thinks, and his curiosity is he's probably one of the more curious guests that we've had. Just the way he's a journalist, I guess, kind of author, and just the way he writes and speaks really was amazing. So those would be my kind of two if I had to put them out there.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know Mark, he's an unbelievable author. He wrote this fantastic book called The Dorito Effect. In addition to a few other books. And Harry, you read it at first a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And you gave your copy to me. That's how I read it. And he basically dissects, instead of like thinking about things in terms of like dietary preferences, like keto versus paleo, he thinks about things more so in terms of flavor, and how flavor is really the mechanism that a lot of these profit-driven companies, big food, knows how to pull to get you addicted. So he kind of goes behind the scenes with a lot of these flavor houses, how they know how to combine all these different types of flavorings, artificial, natural, etc., and what goes into it to kind of make you addicted to this food. And one of the things he talks about is this concept of a Dorito, how it's like, it's crunchy, it's savory, it's umami. It's like, it has like all these different properties where it's almost physically impossible to just eat one Dorito. Like you might think you're not even hungry, yet you find yourself like devouring the entire bag. So he kind of breaks through the science of all that and how this is very intentional by a lot of these companies. So that was an unbelievable interview. That's a really good one.
Yeah. He talked about this idea of food intelligence, which I think is like our body's innate ability to understand what nutrition is through the food that we eat via taste. And so it's just an awesome book, awesome conversation. Couldn't recommend that episode more highly.
Totally. I'm trying to think. I'm just looking. I have on the left-hand side of my computer, I have the Spotify tab up. So I have all 100 episodes. And let me see if there's just anyone else that jumps out. But those are some amazing guests.
While you're scrolling, I've got another superlative.
Okay, go.
What's been the most surprising thing that you've learned through the first 99 episodes? And it could be a specific fact. It could be a skill set that you've developed. It could be a general understanding of how the body works, a health topic, anything.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when I look back at just my knowledge of nutrition now, 100 episodes in, 100,000 Twitter followers between the two of us. And I'm just saying that more as like a mechanism, like a barometer for growth that we've had compared to in January when we had 20 followers and you and I had been doing animal-based, we had been doing carnivore, we had done keto, paleo, variations of that for a long time. It's insane how much that I've learned just about nutrition. I think, not to be cliche, I don't think I was fully aware of just how harmful seed oils are to your metabolic health. And I think that I had done variations of keto and carnivore before where I was still eating a lot of food, particularly out when I was living in New York, that was laced in seed oils. So we've had a number. I mean, obviously, like Dr. Kate Shanahan, who pioneered this movement, her episode is amazing to dig into why seed oils are so toxic, so harmful. So from a nutritional perspective, that's been a big thing. But from just a general podcast life lesson, I think I've just been amazed at like just how willing a lot of these people in the space are just willing to help you and just say yes to coming on the show. Like, I think one of the things that we're both really proud of is just like these amazing guests that we've had on that are just filled with knowledge. And we've had 18 doctors on the show out of the first 100 episodes, and people that are just incredibly well-known in the space and have millions of followers. And like, they want to help. And there are people like, even like Dr. Ken Berry, right? He's got 2 million YouTube followers. And he came on within the first 20 episodes and we were getting probably 200 downloads because, he wants to get his message out there to as many people as possible. So I think that that's been really encouraging for me, is just seeing these people that are so accomplished, yet they're humble and want to help. And they really just care about improving the metabolic health for a lot of people. It's been really refreshing. Yeah. How about you?
Dude, I think you're so on point with the seed oil stuff. I couldn't agree more. For me, I think maybe the most eye-opening thing that I learned is a lot of the labeling laws that go behind the beef that are like incorporated with the beef industry, and basically all the regulation that's behind our food system. So the episodes that stick out to me for that are the episode with Jason Rick.
Yep.
And then our episode with Joel Salatin.
I
think that like between those two,
totally,
and some of the Slim episodes as well, but like really Jason and Joel like hammer that message home. And I think that just learning a bit about the Cool Act and how that's impacted U.S. beef prices and how our food system really works, it's been eye-opening for me. And as two people who really want to have an impact and change how we think about the food system, how we operate within the food system, making it a little bit more of a hyper-local approach to food, I think that learning that stuff is key in sort of shaping how we construct our arguments, construct our thinking, our actions around what we want to do with the food system and how we want to have an impact.
So good, dude. You're spot on. Like, some of the episodes that we've done with these regenerative ranchers have been the most eye-opening experiences. And it makes sense. It's like, you want to learn about your food system, like go talk to the people that are raising and growing and slaughtering the food so you can consume it.
Yeah.
So it's like, like you said, we had Jason Rick early on, who's now a podcast sponsor, which we're incredibly proud of. He owns Rick Ranches, all grass-fed, grass-finished, Black Angus cattle out in Crawford, Colorado. Just an amazing human. We've had on Cole Bolton, who owns K&C Cattle out of Austin, regenerative rancher. That was a great episode. Kate Kavanaugh was an amazing episode, regenerative farmer and butcher. Joel Salatin, who I know was a freaking dream podcast guest for you. Shout out Charles Mayfield. And Charles Mayfield, that owns Pharaoh Skincare. Amazing animal-based skincare company that uses lard and beef tallow. So I'm trying to think, are there any other?
You say Taylor?
Taylor would be number 5.
Yeah.
Taylor Collins, freaking dream podcast guest for us. You just had Acorn Bluff Farms on. They raise a very rare breed of pigs. That was episode 99, right before this one.
Mangalitsa. Have you seen a picture of those things?
No. Dude. I need to.
Dude, they're hilarious looking. They're massive, and they have these curly coats. They're really interesting looking, but they're supposed to taste amazing.
I love it.
But yeah, I think that.
Yeah, I've got a superlative for you.
All right, give it to me.
We've had on 18 doctors, right? You're gonna know who's the angriest doctor that we've had on the show.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Tro.
Yeah.
Honestly, no. If Vinny Tortorich was a doctor, Vinny Tortorich would take the cake for sure.
100%. Or Dr. Chafee when he's talking about lifting weights. But
yeah, if you get Dr. Chafee talking about anything that's not purist carnivore, he's definitely up there in terms of angriest in the best possible way, like in intensity. It's like the best type of way to be.
Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, Dr. Tro, we recorded episode 27 with him. So he owns his own practice that really centers around therapeutic carbohydrate reduction and trying to help people, achieve optimal levels of weight and an overall great quality of metabolic health. And a lot of what he's doing has been inspired by his own journey. I think at one point he was well north of over 300 pounds, stumbled into the ketogenic space, started leveraging low carb diets, lost hundreds of pounds. And now I know he's done like half marathons. He's a big runner and is just incredibly true to his principles. And we were joking about him being like the angriest doctor because he just gets fired up and he's passionate. Like if you go to his Twitter account, if you listen to our podcast with him, he's just so committed to these principles and he breaks out all of the fraud and corruption that go into Western medicine to the point where, he broke out of that mold and started his own practice. So he doesn't take insurance. Everything's out of pocket. He's put up a ton of money. He's gone into debt for this because, he believes in this particular system for trying to help people get healthier. So it's like, you connect with people like that. And it's just like some people like Tro, like we're lucky that they exist because they're like the highest caliber people you'll ever meet.
Yeah. I mean, the courage that he has to go step out there and do what he's doing in terms of, kind of taking the medical field head on is really inspiring. And I also would add, he's probably the most well-researched person, potentially the most well-researched person we've had on the podcast, in terms of just understanding all the different studies, being able to navigate what's a good study, what's a bad study. He's just incredibly well-read. So I think that conversation with him was an amazing one. Definitely worth checking out.
Totally. I also had one more question for you.
It's me.
Is there a moment that sticks out where you remember walking away being like, I think that this thing's really going to work? Like, not that you didn't always believe in this thing, but like whether it was like a guest or a moment where you're like, dude, we're doing this thing. This thing's going to work.
It's happened a few times for sure. Let's see. The first one that comes to mind is, I think, CJ Wilson.
Yep.
When he was talking about his hero's journey, I was just like, we were really resonating with what he had to say because he's a professional baseball player. He's a meat eater, like Christian
straight edge.
Connected with him on so many different levels. And so I think like he was very inspiring for us to speak to, but that also gave me a lot of hope for what we were doing and gave me a lot of confidence for what we were doing. I thought that was a great conversation. And
And
then,
didn't you, sorry to cut you off, didn't you show that podcast to your mom and sister in the car? And they were like, you could tell that they were like proud and realized that this isn't like a joke. This is like, we're doing this thing.
yeah, no, I was playing it for him on the way down to my brother's graduation. And I don't think they had listened to an episode of the podcast up until then. And they were like blown away by like just what who we had on in the first place. Like CJ Wilson's a professional baseball player, awesome guy, and amazing perspective and insight into life and just all these different topics that we talk about. And then I think that they were just like proud that you and I were out here just doing our thing, and so it was cool to see them just get excited about it. But back to the question, the other two moments were, I think, Rob Wolf and Taylor Collins,
Yep.
because there's something about being out at. So Rob, I think, was just one of those guests where like you just don't know how to describe talking to somebody who you've held in that high regard for such a long time, and then having the type of conversation that we had with him, like the depth of it. I was like, man, if we can get Rob Wolf on the podcast within the first 100 episodes and ask good questions and have a good conversation, like we have something here. And then the Taylor Collins experience for me was like kind of just everything coming full circle, where we had gotten really invested and interested in the regenerative agriculture space, specifically in Austin. We had gone out to Taylor's ranch for 2 times, and being able to go interview him at his property and just share a good conversation together about the future of the food system, and him just genuinely being thankful for us coming out and like sharing the time with him. That to me was like, this is what I want to be doing. Therefore it will work out.
I agree. I mean, that was probably not to steal your thunder, but I don't see it like the Taylor episode was, for anyone listening, that was one of the most special things ever, because we both just looked up to him and Katie so much, just like the way that they injected their soul into their business. Like we had eaten epic bars for years. We love Force of Nature. We had both gone to their bison harvests at Rome Ranch. We had gone to the Regenerative Agriculture Conference, and that Regenerative Agriculture Conference was in the middle of April. So we had been going in our podcast for like a month and a half. So, we had a very, very little following, but we were consistent and we knew what we could turn this thing into. And I just remember us like leaving and sitting in your Ford Explorer and just saying like, dude, if we could just get Taylor on by the end of the year, man, like that would just be such a win. And then to go from that moment in the middle of April to sitting in his kitchen with Katie there, like 2 months after that, recording this amazing conversation, asking all the questions that we were curious about. And I remember, just for me, that was a moment where like I was just kind of in the middle of my 9 to 5. I felt scatterbrained. I didn't feel like I was giving this the best effort that I could have. I didn't feel like I was giving my job the best effort that I could have. That was like a shot of adrenaline of like, you need to just keep trusting what you're doing, because you guys are shattering your goals quicker than you think. And they're like, what you guys are doing is just really special. So just keep going and trust in it. And, things will work out the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah, I think there's something there. There's a message baked into that where, you were working, feeling maybe a little bit overwhelmed with all the different things you were working on, but we had some clearly defined goals in terms of guests that we wanted to get on. And I think having those clearly defined goals that you can then go achieve and cross the goal off the list, just the action of, sensing that accomplishment, like, hey, we put this dream list together and we've checked off like basically all the names at this point, minus a few, which we'll get to in a second. And I just think that helps you anchor yourself in your will to continue to keep going, like having goals clearly defined and then going after them. Like, you don't need to hit them all the time, but like when they're clearly defined and just like objective, like, hey, get Taylor Collins on your podcast, and you do it, it gives you a resurgence of energy that I think is really important. But on to another point, dream guest list for the rest of the year. We have 3.5 months, Brett. Who are your golden goose guests for the rest of the year?
So I think,
and you can't say Jason Rick.
He's listening to this out in his ranch right now with his headphones popped in.
Yeah, he's doing some sort of weird rancher thing right now.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart for sure. I this is so cliche, but I think doing a live episode in Miami with Mark Sisson obviously that's the goal that you and I have talked about for for the last 7 months since we've been doing this thing. He's probably through Primal Kitchen, through his blog, Mark's Daily Apple. I mean, he's had as big of an impact on us as Rob Wolf or Sean Baker. He's just top three impact. And to have that longevity and look the way that he does at 68, 69, built out Primal Kitchen. I mean, he's just an icon, and I think it would be amazing just to do it the right way and just record a live episode with him in person and just ask all the questions that we really want to ask. I also, and I don't know if this would be before the end of the year, but I think that it would be really cool to just add a segment on like just chefs in general and just everything that goes into their preparation and cuisine to cook at a really high level. This, I'm a huge fan of Chef's Table and just how like the way that these chefs pursue perfection. I'm a huge Marco Pierre White fan. I think that doing a live episode with him in London and talking about like his journey to 3 Michelin stars by 26 would just be a freaking amazing episode. I mean, same thing with Gordon Ramsay too. So I think in Austin, like getting I think his name is Jesse, the owner of Dai Due, who's a really accomplished hunter. I think that would be a great starting point. I mean, he was just on Rogan. He's an unbelievable guy. Dai Due, all local Texas ingredients. They cook with beef tallow. So like, I would love for us to build out like a kind of like a chef sub series and just interview some of these chefs that I've looked up to. So,
who's the chef rancher in New York?
Danny Barber.
Danny Barber.
Yeah, he's been on Chef's Table too. I mean,
if we can make that happen, that would be incredible. I think that you and I are both very much equally. We're inspired by food from all angles, like the preparation that goes into raising high quality food for people to then go nourish themselves with, but then also the preparation of like mastering cooking and dishes that people truly enjoy and can create culture around. Like that to us is very inspiring. And I think that adding that to our go forward mission is totally what we need to do it. If we're in London interviewing Marco Pierre White within the next 12 months, I will die happy. That would be unbelievable. I think for me, so Mark Sisson, you stole mine. But when I think about how to think about health, I think about Mark Sisson. Like when I'm a 28-year-old guy, how do I want to age? What do I want to look like? What do I want my life to look like? I can literally envision a version of myself trying to be like Mark and just replicate what Mark has done with his life. Dude, I think the guy is just a badass. Like he's incredibly active, very healthy, has run businesses. He's an inspiring guy. He doesn't, I think he speaks his mind, which I think is not all that common these days. I really appreciate the guy for who he is. So I would love to have him on. And then a few others for me, Morley Robbins. I know
we got to get him on.
You're going to laugh at that one. We've got the hook in the water for that one. And then we have, for me, I think 2 guests will be great. So Gabe Brown and Ray Archuleta.
Yes.
Just get on and talk about some of the regenerative agriculture stuff that we've been really getting more and more excited about. I just think those 2 conversations would really be expansive for a lot of people who are enjoying the content that we are already putting out there. So that's my list. I think we've got some work to do, buddy. What do you think?
We've got a lot of work to do. We are also missing Gary Tobbs, who incredible journalist, low carb advocate, wrote The Case Against Sugar, Why We Get Fat, Good Calories, Bad Calories, absolute legend. So I think it would be amazing to have him on. And also, we're both big fans of Dr. Peter Attia. I think, especially with him being in Austin, that would be a really special guest because I followed him since 2016. So, but I think that's one of the most fun parts is like putting kind of like this thought out into the universe. So like a desire, kind of like a rocket of desire type thing of like, hey, I would love to have this person on and build a relationship with them and get to interview them, and then just going out to do the things and making it happen.
So when we record episode 200, we will revisit this moment. We'll come back and we'll say, did we do what we said we were going to try to do? And we'll do a little assessment. But dude, it's been awesome. It's been fun just recapping what we've been up to with the podcast and what we're thinking about for the future in terms of other things. I know we're really passionate about putting a product out there that resonates with our ethos, like what we truly believe in, demystifying the nature and truth around saturated fats, cooking all your meals, becoming healthier. So we've got something coming for everyone to enjoy in the next few weeks. And then we're also really excited trying to host some live events and live podcasts. So we'll keep everyone informed on all of that stuff as it progresses. But the podcast has just been so much fun to invest our time into, and it's been great to share the journey with you, Brett. I mean, this has been so much fun, bro. And just seeing what we've done, and also just coming into contact with all these awesome people. It's just been amazing.
100%. Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more. And I hope that for anyone listening to this, like, please don't misinterpret this as us trying to like give ourselves a pat on the back or trying to brag about any of this. This is more so just like kind of using it as an accountability point of like, hey, we started this thing 196 days ago. This is what we've done so far. We want to share our journey. So if there's anyone interested in starting their own podcast or doing a creative pursuit, just to help give you faith and hope that like, if we're doing this, there's no reason that you can't do it for yourselves. And we just have big goals. It's like, we have a desire that we want to help make people healthier, and we believe that we can fix the food system. And we view our podcast to be a really strong driver of growth to help accomplish those goals. And we're very excited because we feel like these first 200 days, the base layer has been built, but we're very excited to just invest in production quality, audio quality, visual quality, do more in-person episodes. Like, we want to spend our money to make that happen so we can make the experience for you as a listener just as good as possible. So like, I would just expect more energy, more intensity. I'm living in San Diego now. Harry's in Austin. I'm moving to Austin November 1st. I'll be crashing on Harry's floor, which would be shades of last year. And we're literally just going to go to the mattresses and build this thing out for you. So we're just so excited. It's been literally the best period of my life, man. So I just wanted to thank you. You're my brother. I love you. Love everyone that's listening to this show, and just really excited to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, I think I couldn't have said it better myself. And I also want to echo your us patting ourselves on the back comment. I do think that you and I both distinctly love the idea of spreading inspiration and getting people excited about life and being happy and finding their things that fulfill them. And I hope that this is what that episode is for people. And hopefully all of it was interpreted as sharing what we've learned through 100 episodes, trying to make something happen, and going on the limb and just doing our thing. So hopefully people are inspired by this and continue to be inspired by what we're doing, because that's something that we want to share with you, because we're both, highly motivated and inspired people and want other people to see that light. So this has been great, dude. Let's I'm sure we're going to talk in 2 seconds, but just as a wrap up here, thank you to the audience. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we look forward to the next 100.
Love it, brother.